Hello, and welcome to this episode of Getting to Know the CS1 Game Engine. What we're about today is to look into a component called dotrow that I have made to assist the team that is making a Pac-Man clone in 3D, and they want to place the dots for this Pac-Man game in rows, just like the original Pac-Man game. Now, to make these efficient, we want to reduce the amount of code so that we don't send unnecessary amounts of code down to the client that's going to be burdensome for whoever is running and playing the game. Also, it's better if we make the code well designed for the developer who is designing the levels, who might be laying out the dot rows. So we want to make a friendly API and a workflow for them as well. So that's what this is about. If we take a look at the component that I've composed, it's called, or I've named it dotrow. And this component basically takes the dimension that you're going to allow to change. If you're going to be setting out a row that is laid out on the X axis direction, then you want to say change X. If you want to lay out the row along the Z axis, you would say change Z. This is a flat level, so there won't be any layouts in the Y direction. It will only be the X or the Z. The to value that's passed in is going to be where we're going to be laying that last X or that last Z position. The from is going to be taken from the element that we put this dotrow or assign this dotrow to, and we'll see that in a moment. So what I've done in the component is I'm only using the init function and the update function. The init function, if we look at it right here, sets some variables up, and they're abstract enough to handle everything that we need with only one for loop. So if you had 50 rows in your level, you wouldn't have 50 for loops in your code. You would only have one that's in this component. So we can already see in that use case, we would have a huge decrease in the amount of code that was sent to the client. Now, if I go ahead and just close up for right now the init function, so the update function is really here to enable the developer to adjust values so that they can easily lay out where they want the row to be using the A-frame inspector. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how this works in reality. So I'm going to go ahead and show it. And let me turn down the sound here a little bit. Okay, so if I go ahead and open the inspector with Control Option I on a Mac, and I'm in Chrome, it's just a shortcut, you can see I already have one row that I laid out a little earlier. So that row was laid out using the inspector as a helper. So let's take a look first of all what the code looks like for laying out that row, and then let's lay out another one. So let's go ahead into the index HTML and take a look at that particular row in the code. So if we look right down here, and let me just make this a little smaller, we can see that here is the row, the dotrow. So the dotrow is just a generic entity without any geometry or anything. We gave it an ID in case we want to access it easily later on. And then we add the dotrow component. And since we're allowing this one to go in the X direction, we can just keep the default change in the X, and we're setting the to value to -50. The position is actually nicely just obtained from using the inspector, so we don't have to play around with typing in position values, as you'll see here in a moment. So I'm going to get ready to add another row right under here, and we'll call it dotrow2. Show you how easy it is to develop this. So let's go over in the inspector, and let's just say that we want to lay out a row, maybe back over here, and maybe tilt this over a little bit, and let's go click on the scene and add an entity, and let's just position the entity over here at the end of, maybe right over in this area, and let's give it an ID. Let's call it dotrow-2, call it dotrow-2. Simply need to add the dotrow component, so we'll go down here and add the dotrow component. It already populates it based on the defaults with the change in the X direction and the 2 going up to going to negative or going to positive 10. But we want to go out to maybe negative, I'm guessing negative 60, let's go negative 50 first, and let's just see. So if I go negative 50, we can see it actually adjusts. It actually gets rid of all the previous ones, and then what it does is it goes and reruns the init function. So we've got to go a little bit further. So if I make minus 70, let's see where that takes me. Then that looks good, minus 70. Now what's important here, to make the position export properly, just go up here to the Y position, click on the Y position, maybe set it to 1 or something, doesn't really matter, and then hit enter, and then we'll click the export to clipboard button. We'll go back in here and we paste our code in, and now we have the position, we have the ID, we have everything we want. That's how quick it is to develop with this component. Now let's go in and just refresh the game, and now we should see both of those there. So if I go over here, there's that first row. Maybe turn the sound up a little bit. All right, so there's that first row, and here's that second row. Really easy to develop using this dotrow component. Now what's the takeaway for other teams or other people developing with the CS1 Game Engine? Be thoughtful, be mindful about your abstractions. And also use the component system. It's an entity component system. A-frame is the underlying framework, and underlying that is the 3JS rendering engine. So we want to use that A-frame framework that the CS1 Game Engine is built on in the proper manner. That means building out components or making custom entities, and not just making our own way of doing things. Let's adhere to the entity component system, and let's also just be mindful that whenever we're coding, our abstractions, if we make them wisely, can be easily used, or components can be easily used in the inspector to help us develop. I hope you appreciated this tutorial. If so, go ahead and like and subscribe if you're not already, and have a wonderful day.